Hi, and welcome to the Math Together show, where thoughtful math educators gather and learn together. I am Dr. Sue Looney.
I'm Heidi Subnani.
And I'm Molly Vokey.
We are so excited to have you with us here today. Today, we are going to answer 3 questions. We're going to accomplish 3 things. We are talking about streamlining the curriculum. So we're all facing a challenging school year ahead, and we've got to make some tough decisions. So we're going to do that with you today. So number 1, why do we need to streamline that curriculum? We're going to get into that. Number 2, how do you streamline the curriculum? We're going to give you a plan. And then number 3, we're going to model it for you. So this will be a working session, and we're going to use 3rd grade as a model. This is work we do all the time with districts and members of the learning community, and we invite you to investigate that after today's show. If you want to hear more, you can always check out our website. So should we get started, ladies?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Let us know in the comments if you're here and where you are from. That kind of helps us as we're going through, knowing what state you're in and how quickly you're going to have to get your streamlined curriculum together. So that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about, is that why. So some of us, in our case, are just beginning the summer break, if we can call it that, during the time of COVID. And so we're looking into, not necessarily forward, but into the next school year and thinking about, okay, how do we streamline this? We know that things are going to be in constant upheaval based on just what we've been going through the last couple of months. And so we want to make sure that we have a solid plan going into this. Each state has its own kind of way of planning for that. And in our location, schools and districts need to come up with 3 different plans for providing instruction for students. And so that is something that we're kind of having in the back of our mind. And then if you're joining us from other parts of the country, that might look a little bit different for you. But one of the things that we know for sure is that we absolutely must narrow our focus in mathematics for next year. And it is not going to be okay or acceptable to be like, oh, well, we'll just go back and teach all the things that we may or may not have gotten to in the previous year. We are making the case, along with NCTM, NCSM, Achieve the Core, and many others, that we need to be working with on-grade level standards and providing just-in-time or just-in-case intervention for the students that we're working for. And so we're really going to get into that, but that's the philosophy and framework that we're coming from, is that we're going to be looking at and working in grade level standards. We're going to give students the challenge and the opportunity. This is not the time for that opportunity gap to widen. This is for all students that we work with, regardless of their learning situation this year. We want to make sure that we're working as much as possible within grade level content.
Yeah, and so we know we're going to have a time situation, right? Because we have students who have not been in our buildings with us. And so let's say it's 3rd grade and we're about to start a unit on multiplication. There may be some prerequisite knowledge that we need to attend to. So now we do a formative assessment. We find out what's happening for that content, and then we start building it up. So therefore we need more time. So it just isn't going to be possible, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we think about that just-in-time formative.
Yeah.
We're not saying, oh, like, let's assess everybody on everything at the beginning of the year. It's as we're getting to that standard, we're looking at the progression documents and saying, oh, this could be something that they need. Let's see where they are and how we can adjust for that.
Yeah. And we talked about some of that stuff in previous shows, which always stay on the Facebook page, so you can check those out. So we can talk about the resource that we're really going to lean on for this conversation today.
Yeah, we have been using Achieve the Core in our planning for many years. They have done an excellent job of taking the standards and giving us priority standards called major clusters. and then the supporting clusters. So this is not a new document, but what we do have that's brand new, that was put out actually today, is the Student Achievement Partners put out an even more focused document that gives us guidance on what standards are real priority standards, and then the remaining standards, and what should we do with those standards. There's recommendations there. So we're going to dig deep into that today with grade 3, and give you a kind of a sample of a conversation that might happen for 3rd grade teachers and administrators as they're planning for next year.
Yeah. And so I just went ahead and put the link to Achieve the Core in the comments, so you can pull that document up, and we're going to take a look at that.
I just wanted to say hi to Garrett. Garrett's tuning in again. Hi, Garrett.
Awesome.
So sorry. You'll see us having this conversation like we do with teachers when we're working together currently in a virtual space. But these kind of conversations are what we have constantly with districts and teachers that we're working with as part of Looney Math Consulting. And we're also going to be talking about a great opportunity a little later for those in our learning community.
Yeah. So how do we do this work then? We're just going to start doing it with you today. We're going to provide that model, and we decided to start with 3rd grade as an example, but the process would be the same for any grade level that you're looking at, K-8. And then when we're looking at the upper grades, it's going to look a little bit different as we work through those standards. So what I'm going to do is share my screen and show you a look at this document from Achieve the Core. So I think it was 111 pages. So rather than just, there's that overwhelm, we're going to just streamline and get right to the conversation. So let me go ahead and share.
While she's doing that, I'll tell you what's in those 111 pages. At the beginning, it gives us a short introduction as to how and why this was written, and the philosophy behind it, and then it gives each grade level. So you would probably be focusing on one. You wouldn't need to read 111 pages.
Right. So I think ELA might be in here as well. And of course,
the ELA is in there also.
Yeah, there it is. So our world, of course, is mathematics. So here's grade 3, and you'll notice what they have here are these priority grade level content standards. And those were in their initial documents where they've got, this might look familiar to you, that little shrunk down one. We actually have that printed out with us today. So coming into a meeting, we want to print things out so we can underline and highlight as well as work on a computer. And then what they've done is gone further. So they've taken and they've given us considerations for this year. So there are 4 of the clusters that are considered priority, and they've given us advice around those in the first table. So we're going to do more of that. I just want to show you the key components and not bore you with each and every detail here. But then what they do, this is so awesome. They say these are the remaining standards and what you do about those. And they've gone through what remains, and they continually use the same verbs across grade levels so we can have vertical conversations. So that it's either a priority or you eliminate, you combine, or you emphasize. And they tell us what we should be doing with each one. So it's so awesome. So that's what you're looking for. Further in here, which we're going to tackle later in July, but not today, they talk about the connections of mathematics and the standards for math practice to our social and emotional learning, which is critical as we get to be back together. So if you have questions, if I'm moving too quickly, go into that chat box and let us know. Heidi and Molly, anything else before I dig into the document?
I don't think so.
Oh, Molly, you were going to say how many standards there are.
Yes, so in grade 3, there are 25 standards in total for mathematics, and they have said that the priority standards are 11. So when you look at this particular page that we have up here, the priority, it looks like it's only a short 4, but within there are 11 standards. So fewer than half of the standards are being considered priority at this point. We really need to hone in on that 3rd grade stuff.
Yeah, and that's the same, right, for the other grade level. So it's just like so useful and so timely that this is out this early in summer for us.
Correct.
So
and
with
keep in mind, even prior to this, if we're looking at the standards that are there, there's always been a heavier emphasis on certain standards. Okay, so we should be spending the majority of our year on the things that are the most meaningful, the most foundational for learning now and in the future. And so we're narrowing that. Sometimes not all curricular resources will help you with that narrow. They're still providing similar amounts of time for all of the standards instead of really focusing them. This year, we do not have time for that. Okay?
Yeah.
Like we have to think about, okay, what are the essential learnings for students? How do we give them really rich opportunities that are focused?
Yeah.
For all students,
Yeah.
not just our high flyers. We're not doing that, right? All of our students need to have this rich learning, these rich learning opportunities. And one thing that the Achieve the Core has always done, right at the bottom in this teeny tiny writing, it says at least 65 to up to 85% of time should be spent on the major clusters. So this is not new. We're just even honing it more for this particular year.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again then and get into our template. So this template, we're sharing this. Let's get here. We're sharing a blank one of these. At the end, we'll give you a link where you can get a list that outlines the conversation we're having right now and then gives you this as a template. So what we've done here, that box that had the 4 priority areas listed, we've pasted them in. And we're going to go through all of them. Across the top, the steps that we go through is let's look at the standards. Let's look at the consideration. Let's look at the unit or lessons or chapter or whatever your resource you have is. And then how are we going to teach those things? And then when, right? So we're moving through the advice to the where, how, and when. And we're going to do that together right now. So
can I just note, Sue, that the considerations, which is the second column, the considerations come directly from the Student Achievement Partners document, just in case you are wondering.
Yes. So literally, I have copied and pasted, well, Heidi copied and pasted this right in there. So we're going from here, copy, paste in here. Okay.
Now we have added the broken down standards. So 308A is then broken down into pieces. And so we have provided that for you, what each of those standards is, the language versus just the number. I don't know about you. I haven't had the opportunity to memorize them all, but know exactly what each one of those means. So we want to make sure that we're including what those standards are so that we're thinking about, okay, what does that look like? So we have this major cluster, but within each of the 4 major clusters that we have left, there are standards that come underneath that we're really going to be addressing during this time.
Yeah, so let's start there. So the first line here said it was this 308A, and from the little teeny tiny document up here, they told us that was called Represent and Solve Problems Involving Multiplication and Division. But when we go looking, we're like, well, what does that mean, right? What are our standards? So the first step would be to take a look at the standards. So let's take a look at them. This includes interpreting the products of whole numbers, interpreting whole number quotients, using multiplication and division within 100 to solve word problems, and they get specific by using drawings and equations and symbols for unknowns. And then the last one, again, determine the unknown number in a division or multiplication equation relating those three numbers. So there's a lot going on there. So,
and we think about, okay, that goes from the very beginnings, just partitioning shapes in second grade into rows and columns, and then all the way through really having some fluency within 10 in addition and subtraction and applying that to word problems. So this is not just solving
it's not just 4 little standards.
Right. These are fairly major works of third grade.
So Heidi, I like that you brought up the second grade. So when we're talking in this first column and we've copied that in there, this is what we want to think about. So what is the prerequisite information that may need some review or some enhancement to get ready for this content? So we would spend several minutes here, right? We're going fast today. Not all of you tuning in teach third grade, but there's a lot in that one statement. Represent and solve problems involving multiplication. All right, well, let's appreciate really the intent because we've identified it as one of 4 major things.
And if you scroll like just up a little bit, Sue, so we have that determine the unknown. Oh, I'm sorry, the other direction. The determining the unknown in a number, so looking at that relationship between the two. So when I'm thinking about that, that's when I'm beginning to think about where that array understanding from second grade comes into play, right? So we're looking at, okay, if I'm building a 3x4, am I doing row and column or column and row? Does it matter? Like all of those things I want students to have that understanding for. So before I do that particular standard and before I look at the relationship between that, I'm going to want to see, did they do any of that in second grade? And if not, it's not a huge thing. We can easily do that because we're going to build on those representations as part of that standard where we're doing a word problem. So why couldn't I use a word problem that lends itself to building an array and showing that relationship between multiplication and division? So we have to think about, okay, like I'm going to spend maybe a bit of time here, but that's okay. We're not reducing according to the consideration any of the time spent on these standards.
Yeah. So let's go there. Let's go there next. So the next, after that, we're going to continue a robust discussion here. We might even invite representation from the previous grade level. And now we've got the consideration, which in my brain, I think of that as, the recommendation. And they say, well, there's nothing special to consider, except that students may need extra support, which Heidi, you were just highlighting for us around column structure and arrays of objects. And this is critical. Time spent on instruction and practice should not be reduced. So all of the time that you've done in the past, you're going to also do. Plus, there might be additional support.
Yeah, there's also, they talk about when they're talking about properties of multiplication, of using properties for multiplication and division to build in potentially some extra practice with double-digit sums, because that allows us to understand the distributive property, which is super important for multiplication and division. So that's yet another second grade skill that would be reintroduced here, and that falls into place value later on anyways. So
yeah. So moving through the template, the next column is, okay, so what units and lessons? We're really not going to fill that out today because we don't have a program as consultants and we don't know what yours is and everyone's is different. But here's where you say, okay, so it says teach it that, don't cut back on time. Let's find those things. Let's find all those lessons, materials, etc. So we would list them here. So for example, we might say, okay, well, module 3 and 4, I don't know, whatever it is. We want to talk here. So now what is the mode of instruction? So this is where we're going to think, okay, this is critical. Is this happening at school, at home, in practice, in routines? So this, I believe, let's start here. This is really going to be core instruction, right? These are going to be focus lessons.
So as much as possible, so depending on where we are in the fall, and I know some people's fall starts in a month or two, you know, in like 5 or 6 weeks in August. So
Right.
thinking about, okay, how can I introduce this and provide focused lessons around these standards when I have students in front of me?
Yeah.
And
So,
what
right.
considerations am I going to need to make with manipulatives? Because if you see, the standards are pretty specific there. We're using drawing, symbols, arrays, equal groups, partitioning into pieces. Okay, as an instructor, how am I going to have to plan for that? Okay, I'm going to have to make sure that each kid has their own set, etc. Do they want to have something that they can use at home? Okay, maybe that's just beans or dried spaghetti or noodles or whatever it happens to be. Like, what can we provide so that we're providing some core instruction at school plus some practice at home? Or if you're in a hybrid situation, what does that look like?
So see, I'm typing along as you're talking. So this is what we want to be doing. So we're really teasing out. What about what part of those standards would work really well at home?
I think that practice piece.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're definitely going to be introducing, as part of interpreting the products of whole numbers, what our, you know, like what we would consider quote unquote fluency pieces of it. So instead of flashcards, maybe we think about what games could be played at home, what games could be played online. Are there computer-based resources
Right.
that are game-based that we could use to do that?
Yeah.
I think districts also when they're thinking about at-home learning, they obviously need to think about the resources that they have already used in this past 3 months, and then what are some things that you're taking on this year as a result of not having enough in the past 3 months? Because I know that my districts are really talking about, you know, what didn't work and what did work and what they're doing to solve the problems of didn't work.
Yeah.
Molly, do you think number talks, because I know you've done this with some districts, can be done? We know that they can be done at school. We talk about that all the time, but like, is that an at-home option that we think is
I think it's an at-home option if you are able. I know that there have been people who have done number talks kind of with students, you know, remotely, but then you know, face-to-face remotely, so to speak, on Zoom or on Google Meets. But then also I know that some teachers were putting out the prompts for number talks and then having kids respond in writing, which is not typically how number talks are done, but they were able to then share some of their written responses back to students. And I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of bring those in. I'm working with a district, and that was our big thing this year, was working on number talks. So some teachers approached it in different ways.
Okay, so I think number talks about situations when we multiply or divide makes sense here. I'm just watching time here, and
We're going.
I'm thinking about journals, right? We have an opportunity, and journals can be something that we start and we teach the process of using a math journal. And then if we are suddenly needing to be at home, that work can continue at home. So anything else here, and we can refer back to our standards where we're thinking about what kind of instruction. It's core, it's focus, it's some routines. Oh, you know what? Counting routines work really well here, right?
Yeah, sometimes teachers are using those in their morning meetings or after lunch.
So we would continue to brainstorm and then think about, just like the two of you were just chatting, right? So is this at home? Is this at school? Could it be in all three? But we really want a lot of in-class instruction around this topic. So the last decision would be, so like, what months are we talking about for this?
I mean, I think fall, right? This is the major work of grade 3. If you start too late, I mean, I'm always living in fear that, you know, we're going to have an emergency closing again. So I say they started as soon as possible.
Yeah.
To get as much learning time in the classroom as you can. So I would say fall, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
And then just know this is going to be something that we're going to need to spiral through the whole rest of the year. So students have all year long to engage in opportunities of rich discussion and tasks around this. But if at all possible, we want to start our core instruction at whatever beginning of the year we have. And I think, that might be something to kind of consider.
Okay.
Yeah, it is something to consider, because I mean, we hear teachers all the time, even at the middle school level, who are talking about their students not knowing their facts, right? So we really need to make sure that teachers have this kind of outlook that, your school year is a whole year long, and just because you're done with that module or that chapter does not mean that content is solid and done. So we need to keep spiraling back.
And I would say, too, just if we're thinking about the mode of instruction, if you go back to one of our previous shows, we had a Venn diagram that can help you there think about what the standards are and what kind of instructions. You might want to think about pulling that out and looking at those modes of instruction that we're thinking about, which ones are going to work best in each of those situations. So just a reference point to think back to one of the previous documents that we've shared.
Yeah, great. So this would be the process. So we start with a standard, we look at the consideration, we find our lessons, we talk about instruction. The timeline really might come after going through all the standards, I'm not sure, but we wanted to model that, and we're getting close to our half hour, so we're going to go a little bit more quickly, but this is the work, this is the process, and you can see that we can really start to feel better about mapping out our plan. The other kind of standards, this will go fast, because the other kind of standards are the ones that were not the focus. And the advice here is awesome because it says eliminate. So this is part of 30A9. There's some stuff in the beginning of that that's about story problems, but now we're talking about identifying arithmetic patterns, and they're like, yes, like those are fun and great, but no, those can be eliminated. So we can identify, and I think this is important for teachers, let's find those units and lessons, and then that's it. Like literally, maybe we highlight this whole box and make it red. Like we're definitely eliminating that. If you are in a state that is saying teach each and every standard, you're still going to hit 30A9 here, because the first part of it is not part of what they say eliminate, but you've got some tough decisions to make. But this would not become part of your core instruction. This does not become your face-to-face time. This does not become an intervention group, all of those things. We're looking for where we could put that. So at-home practice, things like that. So this one is pretty easy. The last category, anything else in that before we go to the last one?
No, I'm just saying, that just means, think about, okay, if that's something that you feel or you are being told you still have to do you still have to provide resources for every single one, that's fine. That can go home. Maybe we have a short video that we can find online that does that instruction, but really that is not the focus of the work. The focus of our work are those other pieces of that particular cluster.
Yeah, that classroom time should really be protected as gold, and very uncertain what could happen going forward. So those ones won't take you long to go through there. And so this took some time, but there's only, I think there were 14 of these recommendations total. The other ones are things that say combine. So this advice is a little bit more directive. Again, this is not a core focus. And the advice here was around 3NBT. And it's about place value here, and it's talking about rounding numbers. And it's pretty much telling us limit the amount of time that you spend here. Combine your lessons. Yeah. So what's going to be important here is the same conversation. What unit and lesson are we talking about? How can we combine them? Maybe the mode of instruction is going to be only face-to-face initially, and then off it goes for practice at home, or we just are moving along. So they're telling us this is not critical. Critical means we've looked at the pathway to algebra. We've looked at our pathway to later success. So we'll be okay if this year we don't exert significant effort here. So I think we're kind of at time, but I want to hop out of the sharing mode and then give the two of you more time to comment on the last two things, because I really did go pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think when we're thinking about that idea of rounding specifically, because we're looking at third grade, we can put that in with other pieces. Okay? Is rounding the most important part of place value in third grade? I'm going to make the argument of no. I can't, other than like estimating is something that I could work on in a routine. I could think about, is that closer to one or the other? Yes, I use estimating as a skill as I'm going forward, but I am not always making concrete, like that the estimating is the skill, not so much the rounding. But having an understanding of place value is going to be important.
I think that rounding comes with time anyways. When Sue's talking about this path to algebra, over the course of time, kids just get to be better at rounding. It just happens as a result of playing with more numbers.
Right.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do is talk about moving forward. I was just trying to post the link for the lead pages. I'm going to have to do that after we're not live. It's not accepting it.
There.
No, it's there 4 times. You're good.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
you did a really good job with that.
Okay. So going forward, this is the process. Ask us questions here in the chat box. Let us know if this was helpful. We'll continue to monitor those conversations and comments for people that aren't watching this live. Reach out to us if you want help. So we have a full suite of ways of working with districts, including our membership site that we're going to talk about, a special opportunity. And that is linked through our main page. So the Math Together community is powered by Looney Math. And so feel free to reach out with questions and let us know. We hope this is helpful. We would definitely appreciate feedback. These are the conversations all of us have already had with districts, although this document is brand new today. So, but we've used this process with really good success. So we hope you feel equipped to go forward and start that conversation, but let us know how it's going and if we can help.
So we have an opportunity to continue this conversation if you want to in our Math Together Learning community on Monday, July 6th at 7 o'clock. We're having an event for our members, and we're going to be talking about the process, what tools you can use, particular things at particular grade levels that teachers might want to talk about. So if you'd like to join us for that, please go on to our website and take a look at Math Together. We always give you a month free, so it's no risk.
And consider if you're not teaching third grade and you're wanting to have this conversation about another grade level, this is that opportunity to do that. Like, we're here to support members of our community and make sure that they're really successful as we go into a really uncertain fall.
Great.
So next week, we're really excited. We're going to have Brittany Rhodes from Black Girl Mathgic. She's going to be joining us to talk about her work in making mathematics really accessible to all, but particularly looking at how we can reach Black girls that are in our classrooms. Her work is available to all and it reaches all, but she has a specific purpose to help provide opportunities for our Black students, particularly girls, to engage in mathematics. We're just super excited to talk to her. That'll be July 9th at 4 o'clock. So we hope that you can be there and learn about the great work that she's doing.
Okay. All right. And so we thank you for joining us today, and we wish you all well. And remember to always be curious.
Have a great day.
Take
Bye.
care.